call the meeting to order. Roll call, Bergstrom. Here. Purdue. Here. Anderson.
Yep.
Cooper.
Yes.
Foss is here and Hauge is absent, so we do have a forum tonight. We'll start with the meeting minutes from January 14th.
The meeting was called to order by President Benji Foss with the following commissioners present: Lori Cooper, Rodney Anderson, Benji Foss. Members absent: Jordan Purdue, Michael Bergstrom, Krista Hauge. Also present: Kim Steffen, Brent Moore, Anna Claire Davis, Travis Reddick, John Langford, Hal Hickel, Gordon Locken, and Joseph Hickel. It was determined a quorum was present. Steffen read the minutes from October 16th, which were approved as read. Comprehensive plan. Brent Moore summarized the history of recent projects in the past few years and the procedure used to get the city to a point where planning was proactive rather than reactive. He explained that the lagoon capacity held the projects, but it also gave the city time to plan in a proper way. There were several attendees with questions, which Moore answered, and there was a presentation on what the comprehensive plan will involve. There being no further business, the meeting adjourned at 8:40 p.m.
Any comments on the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept it.
Motion by Anderson, second by Purdue. All in favor? Opposed? Meeting minutes pass. So we'll move on to business. And the only item is comprehensive plan. Is that right, Kim?
Yeah, I think are you guys here to talk or just listen, or you're not here for the fire department? Okay.
All right. So we will turn it over to you, Brent.
Okay. I'm going to just quickly go over since there are some new members here, what we've been talking about since the last meeting. This is our last presentation that we did in January, and I'm just going to very quickly go through this since there are some new faces here. So we're working on a comprehensive plan. In the last meeting, we talked about some of the early planning goals, the planning efforts, and moving forward. Early on in Ray, there were some sewer, water, EMS issues, and Ray was coming into a boom. We have updated a number of the fees, the forms, we've updated the zoning and subdivision, we updated a capital improvements plan, which helped to obtain funding through the state for some major projects, the sewer projects and water projects. There have been a number of projects that have been approved in town and are at some point in either construction or almost to final approval. Hopefully Jordan Heights and Sand Creek Estates, the subdivision north of town, will be approved at the next city commission meeting. They're very close to having all of their items completed. Opportunity subdivision, we understand that they're about ready to move forward into the final review stage. Ray Crossing is a project north of the lagoons. Skywatch Inn was just approved for final approval about a month ago before the city council or commission. There have been other projects that we've reviewed over time, some that haven't moved forward. And so there's been a lot of work over the last couple of years approving projects, and also many projects that kind of came through the door and didn't move forward. It just gives you a basic quick snapshot of all the different projects that have come through some stage of approval. In Ray, again, this is one example of a project that has preliminary approval and is about ready to move into final stages of approval. So planning efforts continue. We're working now on a comprehensive plan that outlines the policies and the vision for the future. We'll be looking at zoning and subdivision and capital improvements plans. Those are both activities that are ongoing, especially when you're having a lot of change in your community. So the new vision for Ray, we begin by looking at the existing conditions, how tall are buildings, how big are parcels, how old are the structures, are buildings being used for the purposes which they originally were built. We look at the existing uses in the community. Ray has a downtown area. Ray has a highway corridor going through the road that's just been rebuilt. With a lot of residential, and then there's quite a bit of commercial, light industrial at the edges of the community, and then some residential growing north of the community. This just shows you some mixtures. Certainly we're wanting to look at all parts of Ray in this planning process, both the area around Ray, but also the regular town where we're sitting now. So we want to focus some on the Main Street, the highway area. So one of the projects that has come before the commission and the planning commission over the years has been the vacant lot across Main Street. There's been a lot of ideas for that. This is one of the ideas that came. This was what I'd call a rough sketch. And hopefully what we'll see in the future is something like this, a much more detailed design that shows how parking works, how buildings can be built on those sites. It's really not complicated to do this kind of designs, and we're really trying to get good developers in town that do this kind of work. But this could be what you'd envision if you see the existing structures of Main Street there on the right. If you envision potentially development across the street from Main Street, it could look something like this. Redevelopment in the Highway 2 overlay. We do think that there's going to be a lot of redevelopment in the highway corridor, particularly with the new hotel that was approved. If that moves forward and is built, what will that highway commercial look like as you redevelop your community? Will Gassenhall be there forever? Will the houses on the north side of town be there forever in that corridor? Will some of the other businesses on the south side of the highway, how will those businesses be replaced by new businesses, and what will those new businesses look like? Where will people park? How tall will those buildings be? What will be used in those buildings? All important things to consider in a comprehensive plan. So the community vision is achieved through land use regulations, design guidelines, annexation and service extension plans, and then we have these different districts which make up the community. The next vision for Ray, we clearly understand that the Ray City Commission supports growth. And there's been a challenge not only here, but you can ask a lot of communities across this region. It's a real challenge sometimes getting quality developers who are going to design and develop projects well. And we're trying to make sure that that happens here in Ray. And so we're trying to promote quality designs. We're trying to give very clear images to and expectations that Ray has to the development community for what quality looks like. And to me, this is very clear that these pictures paint a picture of what quality can look like in the future. And then we talked a little bit about just some examples, other projects that we could potentially see in the future. Another important growth framework that we have tried to promote is the extension of streets into the new areas of the community as you grow out from Ray. It's really important to grow the street network out so that we have connectivity as we grow the community. Ray, the traditional part of Ray, is a very good gridded network. There's some challenges on the north side of Ray because you have a tree belt, so you're not going to be able to extend lots of roads through that. And then you have some challenges on the west side of town because a lot of industrial growth has already occurred there, and there are buildings where roads might want to be. But we'll do our best to promote this as a goal and where it's practical to implement that goal. The other issue that we talked a little bit about at the last meeting is the ETJ. The city of Ray administers their zoning and subdivision rules within a 1 mile area around the existing city limits. So I'm just going to stand up and show you. These are the city limits of Ray, roughly. And this area out here is the area where Ray exercises their extraterritorial authority. And so the area of extraterritorial authority is roughly 10 times the size of Ray itself. And so it's quite a big area that Ray administers to, and there have been some proposals within that area. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about two things. The first thing is going to be to talk a little bit more about this ETJ area. And then we're going to talk a little bit more also about public process and having some public involvement, some meetings in April where we go around the community and talk to various stakeholders, and then have some meetings to summarize those. So I'm going to go through this presentation. Maybe before I move on to this, are there any, I would certainly entertain any questions on last month's meeting that I just went very quickly over. For those who weren't at last month's meeting, are there any questions about that presentation that I just showed very quickly that we spent all last meeting on?
What's the Ben Durham downtown project?
It was that sketch. There was a hand sketch drawn project that I showed, and a gentleman wanted to do a series of two-story buildings and got approval to do that, and then the project did move forward for some. So that was that project. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to move on to this presentation. So these are just some images of Ray. historical images that go back to 1995. So if you see in 1995, there's Ray as a community is still compact. There's really relatively little going on outside of the red area that we've identified as Ray. In 2003, that actually remains pretty similar. You know, nothing really is happening around Ray. There's not a lot of land development going on in 2003. It's certainly pre-boom. In 2010, one thing that was starting to happen in Ray is there was quite a bit of growth starting over here on the west side of town. Some of these areas were starting to be, you can see where the earth has been moved and buildings are starting to be placed. There's quite a little bit more activity going on along R&T, but in general in 2010, there's just a bit of activity occurring. And then in 2011, we start to see some additional activity along R&T, some additional activity out here where the well is placed, some additional activity on the west side of town, so you start to see a little bit more land development occurring. And then 2013, you see quite a bit more happening. Basically all of this land over here has been graded, and there are new buildings going on over here. All of this land north of the sewer ponds have been graded, and various activity is occurring there. You've got the area where the new sewer ponds are going in, that's a lot of activity. You've got this new subdivision here, the roads are graded in, and then you've got an extension, the annexation of the city here, annexation of the city into this area. So that's from 1995 to 2013. You notice that the pace of growth, certainly between 2010 and 2013, is much more than it was between 1995 and 2010. We all know why that is. There's a boom here. So now we're talking about moving forward and what happens in this extraterritorial area in the future. And it's a big area. As a part of the task that when we went through the zoning in the last about a year and a half ago, there's a lot of discussion about some additional growth going to the north of town. And we have the existing subdivision that's been approved going to final within the next month. There's some additional area of land that was identified for being appropriate for residential growth north of town. Some additional area to the east of town that was identified for additional residential growth. And then of course we do have, really Ray has a lot of in-town land which is still relatively vacant that may have an approval. For example, the parcel moved by Mark Cahoon has an approval that hasn't moved forward. This corridor coming through this area, there's a lot of activity occurring there and will occur. So the question now is how far out does Ray want to go given the projections? And what we understand the projections to be is we're about at a population of 1,000, up from around 400 before boom. And we're projected to go to potentially 3,500 within a 20-year period. And so that's almost a tripling the population currently. And so the questions are, where does that growth go? And we're going to come back to this and talk a little bit about the different service providers and work with you to identify who we should be talking to in April with regards to that. Before we get to that, I'm just going to quickly go through some of these images, which are more So I'm going to go through just some images around town and try to have a discussion with the planning board a bit about some of these areas. This is the north, let's see, slideshow. Let's see if I can turn out the slideshow. There it goes. Push pause somehow. What is that? I'm gonna try to keep it on this one. Okay, I'm gonna start here again. I hope we stay. So this is an area to the northwest of town that we understand the city has recently made a decision to place a water line. And so maybe Benji, can you describe what's happening there while I try to figure out this technical difficulty of not advancing these slides? The decision that you made with the water tank.
Okay, so we've decided to go with what was option F, which is placement of a elevated storage tank in the triangle piece, I guess. I don't know if you can point to it with your arrow there.
Where is it exactly here?
Yeah, right in there.
Right here. Okay.
So RNT will feed water to that location, and then we will potentially bring a line back down south and then tie into 4th Avenue and bring a low pressure line across town to tie in 4th Avenue and probably possibly do a sewer line as well.
So in this subdivision here, which there are 2 subdivisions here that have been approved and you be built, and one of them is Jordan Heights and Sand Creek Estates. This one's a mobile home project, and you already see some mobile homes on the site. They're just around 100 mobile homes. And so if you project an average of 2.2 persons per unit, which is an average projection you do for homes, that's roughly 220 people that will live in that mobile home park at build-out. This portion of the project's single-family homes, I believe there were just about 35 lots in that. And again, you project at 2.2 persons per lot. You almost have about 100 people. And so just between those 2 projects, you're getting to have potentially another 400 people that will be living in Ray when they're fully built out and sold. If you extend this line over this direction, which we did during the last planning process to take in all of this land, that's roughly a doubling of that. And so if the densities and residential intensities are built similar to this pattern across this land, that's an additional 800 in population. So just right there in this piece of land, which is already identified for future use, you have around 1,200 new residents into your community. So that goes from 1,000 to 2,200 residents. So you're almost halfway to 3,500 residents in your community just in those 2 areas. And that area will certainly be served by the proposed water tank here. So you have to kind of have a long view, understand that projects like this, they take time to get through the process, that they take time to build roads and put in things like lift stations and water lines. And we're very close to having this one done, as I've said, and this one may come online in the future. Certainly there's the potential also in some of these areas for additional growth. There are some limitations with some of the wet water issues, some flows of water that you would see in an aerial. But as we move into the comp plan, one question to ask is where with the planning board is where additionally might some of this growth go? Naturally, you might consider this whole section really here because you have a water tank there. This area is already identified for future growth. So if Ray wants to identify additional area for growth outside of the limits, that's certainly an area that makes some sense. Potentially this area makes some sense. As I said, this is kind of already identified, but maybe up into this area. But as you get further into, you do begin to get into some environmental constraints into this area. So are there any comments or thoughts about the northwest side of town as we look through these areas?
It's northeast.
Oh, sorry, northeast. Thanks, Al. Northeast area.
And Brent, just one thing here, just so we kind of clarify this. The spot you're pointing on the map there isn't the actual tank location. You gotta go, up and to the right a little bit.
Yeah, I can't go up with it. It's a static image.
Right there.
Oh, it's right here?
Yeah,
Okay.
just
this
so
is the
everybody
tank
understands
location.
that that's where it's at.
That's where the tank is. So it'll feed into town. Now we're on the northwest area, and as we were just discussing, this is Jordan Heights, Sand Creek Estates. This is an annexation that the city has already acted on for opportunity subdivision. And certainly there's some opportunity potentially to have additional residential growth occur in some of these areas. Again, here you have quite a bit of water, it looks like, from this aerial.
No, that's
What is
soil types.
That's just soil types here. Okay. Then you have some soil type issues going on here. I don't know what exactly the soil types are. But you have some potential growth in this area on city services. And certainly I think there's been some discussion of this area in the past. Any comments generally on, from the planning board on this area?
I would think if for residential, it'd be nice to kind of keep it lumped together instead of having, you know, a little one here and a little one there and having, you know, it just makes, in my mind, I guess it makes more sense.
Right.
I mean, we're not, you know, we're not big, you know, like a big town where, you know, when they start getting all spread out, it just don't seem like there's a whole lot of rhyme and reason to any of it.
Right.
You know, so I think that whole, you know, from that, wherever that road is, that's on the north side of town, that paved road, I don't know what it's called, 7th Avenue, from back north, to me, that whole area could be a residential area.
Mhm.
And then maybe then south of it, like where, you know, in the light green area, that to me makes more sense for staying with some sort of commercial things, because it's already there.
Right,
I mean,
yeah, and so you have on the west
you're probably
side-
not gonna want a
Right,
pole barn in your backyard, really.
right,
Or
yep.
I wouldn't take those.
Yep. Yeah, so you have some commercial in this area. Obviously, you have commercial along the highway down there, and we'll get to that. You have some commercial here. This area is really high-density residential, a motel, and a restaurant. And so it's going to be, you know, most of the single family is going to occur north of town, according to the current plan. Would that potentially, Michael, are you suggesting that that might
Yeah, I mean, I even
extend
think
there even?
even over that way would
You
make
could
sense,
extend.
just staying
Yeah.
on the north side of 7th Avenue.
Okay, north side of 7th going that direction to like the edge of this field or the edge of this
Yeah.
field maybe? If we were to draw a line, something like that? Potentially.
Right, yeah.
That makes sense to everyone, kind of conceptually. Commercial and stuff? This could be residential and this could be commercial, maybe higher density residential potentially, since you have some of that occurring right here. You might have some of that going on. We'll have to look at it. It's kind of an island of R2 right here, in C of more commercial.
And I think like a motel and inside commercial don't seem quite as odd to me.
Right, it's like a multifamily.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even apartments don't seem as odd.
Okay.
So I was just thinking single family homes
Yeah.
inside of that
Yeah.
seems,
That makes sense.
I mean, you always, with residential, you kind of have this vision of these nice little communities that you see everywhere else, and I think that's what we should be going for instead of putting a house next to something that's not.
Okay, makes sense. I go here next. So this is right along the highway corridor, and we've got the gas station. We have some additional commercial, industrial uses. Certainly, we think that, and then we have a well out here, which is not shown in this area, but so there's some potential growth along the highway, and even some potential growth along the south side of the highway, out in that way, and mostly that would be highway commercial, light industrial type uses that we'd see occurring along that. And so I think that the existing policy that we have right now in place, the existing land use map is adequate, that area doesn't really require much more changing. We might extend some of the commercial a little bit further back, a little bit further north into this lot, as we were just talking about, Michael. We were talking about this green lot. Some of the commercial from the highway and some of this commercial might grow into this area. Does that make sense? That's what we were saying, right?
Right,
Just want to
yeah.
make sure we're on the same page. But in general, you know, you're limited certainly from going too far south by the waterway.
You talking commercial industrial or industrial
Commercial industrial.
for that whole west area?
Yeah, generally for the west area.
You put that next to a cemetery?
That would be the case, yep. So certainly if you have comments that you don't support that, now would be the time to suggest that you don't think that's appropriate.
You don't put industrial next to cemeteries? I've never seen that before.
well, that's already really what's there. That's already been put there.
Well, I can't help it if that mistake was already made.
So that is certainly a consideration, to consider the cemetery and whether or not there should be some type of setback from that cemetery, some type of buffering from that cemetery. Certainly, we can look at that issue and see if there's a need, certainly to buffer the existing cemetery and
You know, looking-
buffering there.
Looking at that map you drew from the south side of the cemetery and went west with it, you know, because the cemetery kind of breaks it off from the industrial, that also maybe makes sense for residential
Right.
as
where-
well. And
Yeah.
this one is kind of separated a little bit.
Yeah,
You know what I
yep,
mean?
so there's some sort of buffer, a natural buffer in
Right.
that area. And it might be worthwhile for us to certainly identify Solbergs as, the Solbergs, are they, so here. Certainly they might be a good stakeholder to talk to about this land, if they're willing to sit down and at least talk about what they think might happen there. You already have some of these commercial uses here are starting to move north, and you already have this approval as it will move to the west. And so I think there should be a conversation with them a little bit about how they envision these uses transitioning on their land. So that we'll certainly identify them as a stakeholder in that discussion. Any other questions about this area? Pretty straightforward. Now we've moved across town. We're kind of on the other side of town. As I mentioned before, we did previously identify some of this area for future residential growth. Is that still generally appropriate, do you think, in some of that area, or is there some other uses? Do we envision highway commercial going out further along this corridor as well, similar to the way it's gone out along the western corridor, or is there a natural break here with R&T and some of the other uses in that direction? What do we see? We haven't really, the last time when we went through that process, we didn't focus too much on this area.
David, do you want houses in your backyard?
I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on this area.
In the old days, they built these towns around the railroad. Now, do you want to put a bunch of residences next to a railroad? Because I hear the people up there on that side of town, they gotta listen to the trains all night and everything.
Yep, certainly that's an issue in this area. I mean, I'll be frank and I'll be very direct about this. The fact is, there's a lot of industrial everywhere in this area because of the boom, and that's just a fact. It's been put in a lot of places, and so there's very few places anywhere where you can put a house and not potentially be close to something else. Now, this specific area, Hal has a good point. There is a railroad going through there, and the railroad is going to expand.
And then do we want another Castleton,
So-
build next to it, build houses next to a railroad where there's
Right.
crude oil
It's a-
tank?
It's a
crude
very
tankers
good,
going
very
through?
good question. Do we want to continue residential in this area because of the rail? And I think that's a good question. And I don't know that we have the answer tonight, but if we're going north with residential, I think that's something we should look at in the future and think about what's gonna happen over on that side of town. You know, Mark has a project with some folks that was approved for residential. Do you, Mark's here too, do you feel like residential still appropriate down there, or is there something else gonna happen, or what's happening with Ray Crossing?
That's out of my hands.
Do you still own the property, or you no longer own the property?
I own it.
Okay. So we don't know, it's out of, he owns it, but we don't know it's out of his hands, we don't really know what's gonna happen there. It'd be nice to know.
And you don't
but-
put residential next to a lagoon.
Yeah, that's fine. But the question is, we don't know what's gonna happen there. Mark just said he doesn't know what's gonna happen there. So moving on, we started there. So those are really the areas around town. This would be the last area, which is quite a ways from any of the existing services. So I really don't anticipate this area south of the existing lagoons and south of R&T Water much happening down there in terms of city infrastructure. I'm not off on that, am I?
I don't think so. And I think we've annexed in some land already,
Yeah.
and like we said before, we try to fill what we've annexed in already.
Yeah. Similarly, this would be where the new lagoon is being placed, so it's unlikely that much growth would occur along this area either. So when you're looking south, pretty limited by just, yeah, So that was really the intent tonight, is just to talk about what's happening right around your city. So we, one of the challenges, and I brought this up before with you, and I brought this up with the city commission too, and is that really your ability to plan as a city, to plan for that population explosion from 1,000 to 3,500 right now, is mostly limited to this area. This is the area that can absorb, plus your existing city limits, can absorb that additional amount of growth. This is probably, 1/5 of what your extraterritorial jurisdiction is. So you're currently administering rules in that area by choice, and it's a choice you've made. It's a choice you don't have to make, and in the past I've advised you against continuing to administer in that 1 mile area, and I will do so again. It's your choice to either focus on this and focus on the in-town part and build Ray from within, or to be also focused on all that area that is 1 mile beyond your limits. And I think, again, as a part of the comp plan, you need to strongly consider what you want to be doing. You can define your extraterritorial jurisdiction however you want to do. You can put a line on the map. You can adopt a resolution or ordinance that says, this is our ETJ. It does not have to be 1 mile. And I still strongly believe that you should consider doing that. That our focus should be on this area and not be focused on places beyond this area for Ray.
What happens with that? So like that stuff north of town, that development that got annexed in,
Right.
is in that jurisdiction, does it move, if
It
that
would.
took up a 1/4 mile, does it move another 1/4 mile north then?
Under the 1 mile rule, there's a specific
does.
way that state law says that you determine the 1 mile, and so if you annex, you're going further into that area. If you just define a boundary yourselves through the ordinance, then that's only going to be adjusted when you redefine the boundary specifically.
Like let's just say it kept on growing,
Right.
then you're into people's farmyards and whatnot, and that's what potentially could happen.
Yep. You'd be keeping it going 1 mile out from the point the furthest edge of your limits.
That's what Williston is doing. They're trying to expand so far out that they include all businesses that they could possibly get sales tax revenue from, and also real estate tax.
Yeah, those are actually two somewhat separate issues. What Williston's doing actually is annexing all of that commercial area.
Right.
And they've actually given away their ETJ powers. So they're no longer exercising any ETJ powers. So Williston did, they said, we're going to annex more land than we can provide services to, kind of in effect. And we're going to control how that all develops within our city limits, as opposed to administering this 1 mile area outside Williston. Then they made a clear policy statement to the county that they wanted the county to create an urban holding area or a reserve area around the city for 1 mile around the city, saying, please, county, do not approve of developments within this 1 mile area, because if Williston continues to grow beyond this large annexation north of Williston, if 10 years from now Williston's still booming and we need to grow further out, then we want that area to be not have been developed on substandard county services, but we want to develop it on urban city standards. It's a very rational approach that Williston's taken, and I think the county is generally starting to agree with that approach. And so certainly that's another good approach for you to consider, and that's kind of what I'm suggesting, is take control of what you can, and then we can also ask the county, hey, this is clearly what Ray wants, and the county knows right now that we administer to this 1 mile area. And so if something comes in that area, they send them to you, and then we talk about it here. But if the county knew that you had a policy statement kind of for that area, but you didn't want to administer the rules there, that would be another way of looking at that 1 mile area. And that's kind of how, like I said, how Williston's looking at it now.
If you use that 1 mile area and as a planning board, you can propose streets in that area, like north of town, you can propose streets. You don't have to set it up so that that's going to be a street there, but it can be a proposal so that if a plan comes about, it's more planned out than it is now. like the two streets in town here that continue and that go through the tree rows. If you wanted to, you could propose that those three streets would continue on. It's just things that you can take care of now before the housing goes in, and that you don't have to worry about getting excited about it and forget something. You can start proposing things now on that 1 mile area that you have jurisdiction over.
Brent, what changed your mind? When you first come here, you argued for this to get 1 mile out.
No,
So
I
that the
didn't.
Ray
I-
had
I
jurisdiction.
never had
We
that.
said from the
I never
very
had.
first
From the very
meeting.
beginning, I've been advising them to, before you were even coming to these meetings, I was advising.
I was coming to these meetings
Okay.
before you were hired.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I've always advised you consistently to not administer to the 1 mile. And I did so very strongly a year ago. It was back in May of last year. I strongly advised you again to not administer to this area, in part because the county was starting to apply their rules more uniformly. And I think we have a little bit more confidence now that they can. And in part for the simple fact, and it's just simple and straightforward, it's 10 times the size of your existing limits. You don't get any tax revenue from that area. You get tax revenue from city limits. I'm all for what Williston has done in terms of annexing as much land as they've annexed if it's truly going to grow and they have the ability to provide services to that area. When you annex property, you also have to be responsible and say, we can provide services within this period of time. That's your responsibility as a city. And again, up until recently, and even still without a water tower, we're somewhat limited with making that statement of we are responsible and we can provide for this additional growth. Once the water tower is built, once the sewer ponds are completely done, you will have the ability to say, we're pro-growth, we want growth to occur in this area, and we want it to be in city limits, and we want to benefit both from the tax revenue and the additional residents that that will bring to your community. But it's only recently that we've been in that position, and that's just a fact as well. I still remain true to my statement that if you're a mile out and the city has really no plans in place, and I know of none. I know no plans that the city has to extend your infrastructure anywhere to that edge of the mile limit. I think you have a plan in place that predicts where you're going to grow, given this 3,500 scenario, and you put in place plans that can help you accomplish that. And then certainly you can extend your vision beyond that. If Ray goes from 3,500 to 10,000, for example, where is that vision going to grow? But you communicate that vision with the county, who's responsible for helping you to obtain that vision, if that's what's going to happen. But you don't get, you're not doing leapfrog development. You're not leaping over land that makes more sense to develop. I mean, cities grew in a certain way historically. They always have. They started right on the railroad, or they started right on the river, and they moved from a central point outwards. And they didn't jump over a bunch of land and then jump over a bunch of land. That's just not how cities have ever grown. And because typically you make investments incrementally, and cities don't leapfrog over land. And that's just, I could give lots of examples of how that occurs. And so, I still remain strongly committed to my recommendation in the comp plan that we should recommend to the city commission and we no longer exercise authority in that area.
So if they keep control of it though, it's not costing them anything right now, and they have absolute control over it, they don't have to ask anybody for permission like the county, they don't have to make any special rules, they control everything right now. It doesn't cost them anything. Clearly they're competent, not distracted by that land sitting out there. So why would you shrink it in when you could just keep that in your control and control whatever you want out there? Nothing out there or something out there, whatever you want, instead of relinquishing it and bringing in your boundaries.
And there is
If it doesn't cost you anything to have it right now.
And there is a plan with the water line already. I mean, the water line and the water tank up north, there is a plan
Gordon,
in progress.
just hear me for a second. And I'm talking about the area which can be taken in by that water, but there are 5 times the area beyond where that water tank can even serve, that new water tank. There's 5 times beyond that. So we're talking about magnitudes of land. We're talking about 10 times the city versus 1/5 of an area. Plan for 1/5 of an area that can accommodate more than 3,000 in population. How big is Ray going to become, Gordon? How big is Ray going to become in the next 5 years? You tell me. How big did we grow from the last 5 years?
I don't think Ray wants to ask the county for permission when they
Now,
can't
that's
have
a
it
different
now,
issue. That's a
you know?
different issue. entirely. How big
Why
is Ray
give
gonna
up?
be, how big is Ray gonna be in 5 years? Just tell me, Gordon, how big are we gonna be?
It can
Ray
be as
won't
big
grow.
as they want to be. It depends on how much housing and how much businesses they provide. The growth isn't anywhere capped at any point. It's what any city decides they want to take. The
Okay, and
potential
so,
right now is mind-blowing because you're banking on a resource of a boom and people with higher incomes and more jobs than most of this country's ever seen. So you have an opportunity to set higher standards, to set higher limits, to control bigger areas. There's no cap on that kind of
so the
thing.
consensus that we have here at this table is Ray can grow to 3,500. That's the consensus.
Or
that the
more,
city- No,
right.
that's the consensus that the city commission has. That 3,500 is a target population.
And
That's a
that's
goal.
what our lagoon
That's
best
what the
is.
lagoon can handle, 3,500 people. Now, in the future, maybe we go from 35 to 10,000, and the lagoon has to be upsized again. And we're looking at all sorts of different issues 5 years from now. But in the next 5 years, this city commission, now if they want to change their mind, if they want to advise us that they've made a different decision, they can. But what we have been advised by both the city commission and the city's engineer is the target population, the design population of this plan. It's a very rational population, it's 3,500, period. And so we are building a plan to accomplish that population.
Why would you want the city of Ray to give up their jurisdiction?
Okay, and so now I'll advise why, and I can go back and go through all. The main reason is that, as opposed to what one of the members of the public suggested, there is a cost to administering regulations. No matter where you go, there's always going to be a cost. People are going to come talk to Kim. You're going to go give Kim your opinion for an hour during the day. That's an hour of time that Kim was paid to listen to your opinion. There are these folks here tonight, including me. We're talking about an area outside that's costing us all money, you money as residents, to think about this area, which is 10 times the size of Ray. So the contention that it doesn't cost any money to plan for an area which is 10 times the size of Ray, right now in the middle of the boom, is just false. It costs money. It takes time. It takes a lot of thinking on the part of your planners, your engineers, your city staff, your residents. It takes a lot of time to come up with those plans. You don't just say things in a meeting and it happens.
And then didn't you just
So-
say that brings in revenue?
If
And
it's
you have
annexed, if a parcel is annexed, it will
Or-
bring in revenue.
Or if a development actually happens. We spend a tremendous amount of money in engineering and planning and our attorney for a lot of developments that never happen. So like you said, now we're talking 10 times that outside of things that are, I mean, realistically, can that happen when we have other opportunities, within reach?
So the process of expanding extra territory is just a matter of the planning, zoning, starting the procedure, like if we do want to expand out someday,
Yep, you just
and then
need
the
to.
city commission approve that?
Yep,
It's just a matter of procedure.
yep. Just a matter of adopting a new line.
So how about we think about this for a while? Does that have to be decided tonight, or can we think about it?
No, I mean, you can do a couple things. We can keep working along this comp plan. This comp plan is gonna take over 6 months to really complete. That's generally how long. Late August is a target date for completion of the comp plan. So in the comp plan, there's gonna be a group of recommendations, things that you wanna implement over time. It can be one of those. That's now in August, you're past one construction season. We're already dealing with some people that maybe are looking at doing different things. So it's time, and time, moves very quickly here. Or we can talk about it at your next meeting, if you wanna talk just about the ETJ. We can talk about just the ETJ at your next meeting and kind of go into depth again. And we did a memo and analysis back in May of last year, which advised you to develop this one line. And at that point in time, I think the planning commission actually recommended to do it, and the city commission made the decision not to, or I can't remember it.
No, we
No.
decided to keep it.
Yeah, they
You
decided,
decide-
to go for
Okay,
it.
so, we could go back and reevaluate that, and that can be done in a couple months, while we're still doing the comp plan. It's really up to you how you want to proceed, if you want to talk about it more at your next meetings, and advance with that, or if you just want it to be a topic that gets into the comp plan, and it's really not addressed until August, which means in October, November, December of next year, it wouldn't change.
If you have that extraterrestrial mile or whatever it is around the city and so forth, how would that deal with if some, say, one oil company or pipeline company wanted to put in a station there, or a drilling company coming in and wanted to put a drilling pad there with 5, 10, 15 rigs on it and so forth? Will the city then have the opportunity to have them move that, so it's not necessarily in the area where we have planned our growth?
Well, it depends on the use. It's very seldom that someone comes and proposes something in one location and you ask them to move it and they move it. So that scenario
Well,
is pretty unusual.
they'd have to come first before they,
Right.
when in their planning
Right,
stage,
yeah.
they'd have to come and say, hey,
In
you know,
general,
we're in that area there, you know,
So-
will you accept us? And you say no.
right. So let's
They'd
talk
have to
about
move
zoning.
outside it.
Let's talk about zoning since that's actually the key issue here. In the ETJ area in Ray, most of the ETJ area is zoned as agriculture. That's the zoning designation. So if anyone wants to do anything other than agricultural today within that area, they have to come before this board and petition for whether it be rezoning to residential or industrial, anything that falls within the zoning
If an
district.
oil company comes and wants to put in a substation or a pumping station or whatever, then
Some in energy-related uses are exempt from local zoning. So there are certain uses that are just exempt. But if that use falls in within the zoning, they would have to come before this board.
well, that's what I'm talking about. If they had that extra, they'd have to come and visit with the
Before this
board
board.
before they could
Yeah,
do
I'm
anything,
saying that.
or they'd have to
But-
find someplace else.
Right. And so if you choose not to exercise your extraterritorial authority in that area, the agricultural zoning district that we adopted here in Ray is almost mirror image to the county's agricultural zoning district. And so the main difference is, instead of coming to ask you for permission to do something in that area, they would have to go to the county planning board and then the county commissioners. There's the same opportunity for public comment. It means if someone didn't want it to happen there, anyone in this room, if you did or didn't want something to happen there, you'd have to drive down to Williston. And Kim goes to these meetings, she's on the county planning commission. You'd have to go to that meeting and you'd have to say, I really think this is a great idea, or I really think this is a horrible idea. And then they'll make a recommendation to the county commissioners. You go before them again and say, I really think this is a great idea. So the process is actually the exact same. It's just a question of whether or not you want to reserve the power and authority to do that here in Ray, and have the responsibility of administering those things and the cost and all the headaches that sometimes come with some of those processes, or do you want to say, you know what, we trust in the county, we trust that they also administer their zoning, we trust that there's a public process and we can go and voice our concerns in Williston if something were to happen there. And that's really a question each of you have to answer. And I think the last time there was a clear, resounding response that no, we trust ourselves better. Even with all the costs of potentially having to deal with it, we trust ourselves better. And I understand that. If that's still your position, I understand that. But either way, the zoning is almost the same. It's very close.
There's still one problem. You're still talking hypothetical instead of reality. That somebody's gonna turn loose of some land to do something. What if that area north of Ray here, what if that land don't get turned loose? That guy lives another 10 years or more. He isn't gonna sell any land.
And that's the important, that Hal brings up an important point, again, that I think it's important for these areas that we've identified for future growth, that we try the best we can to sit down with those owners and talk to them about what your plans are as a city as we move forward. And there are just a couple of large landowners, there are not a lot of them. Let's sit down with them if we can, and talk to them if that's a possibility. If it's not, then you have to, I guess, as a planning commission, consider whether or not what Hal suggests is never going to get developed in 10 years, whether or not that is accurate and true. And certainly we should know that as much as we can.
I think if the city would want to zone a particular piece of land commercial, even though the farmer owns it now and he's not selling it, if you ask that farmer if he's willing to zone it commercial or residential or whatever it might be, to get his okay to do that, and then go ahead and do it so that it's already zoned commercial or residential or whatever you want.
That's what I just said, Gordon.
Yeah, but
Except
be
say-
sure and ask the landowner first before you do it.
Well, right now on that land that you have for residential around the outside, right, the north and on the west there, is any of that available right now to build houses on? Like, is anywhere for sale for anything like? But it's all, you've got it all colored in yellow for residential and ready to go. But none of it's for sale, none of it's ready for the 3,500 people that you're gonna move in and cap off that. There's no place for it.
I think we have that development. I
Well,
mean,
that covers
we've
some of
annexed,
them, but
so we've annexed land in right now. I mean, so we want to develop the land that we've annexed in.
Yeah, we have quite a
Right,
bit
I
of
mean, we don't wanna
land.
annex a bunch of land.
Well,
and
no,
then
I understand that
sit-
part, but the people that own the land aren't on the same page as you guys. 'Cause-
We don't know that. I mean, I think that's what we're talking about. We would have.
Well, what you already
discussion.
have,
Actually-
you know, that's what I'm
actually, we
talking about,
do.
what you already have in the.
We've already talked to Arden Solberg, he's already said he would be willing to let that be developed as long as it was stick-built homes and in nice development. So, that's why it was zoned that way.
That is it, the last time we talked.
So it's for sale?
No, but
He's gonna put homes on it?
he said he would consider, it depends on the developer. Depends on
I
who
don't
comes
think
up there and
the
wants to buy it.
I
This is
approached
for-
him,
Big
I
problem.
approached him when they were trying to put the water line into Wild Rose, and he didn't want anything to do with it. But they, sounds like they've talked to him since.
And the point only being that right now, there is no spot to go build houses on in your guys' yellow zones as far as the outside of the city. There might
Other
be
than
couple
what we've
spots inside,
annexed in.
inside the city limits, but like right now, there's people who have the capability of putting in homes, but there isn't any. And besides that, when you approach one of these landowners, you tell them that you're gonna make a development. First thing that they see is dollar signs, and they want 4 times what the property is worth right out the gate, which makes it just almost impossible unless you're willing to put millions out of your own pocket. Like, no bank's gonna, entertain something like that, so there's multiple things that are doing.
So I think, specifically too, just so we know, there is an application that's been submitted, we know this, for a property at the edge, that the Hickles own, of the 1 mile area. And so we have communicated with the owners at the last meeting as well, we talked about that. We talked about the conceptual plan being submitted that just gives us a general idea of what kind of densities, intensities they're thinking about, how they would think about extending infrastructure, or how they would think about putting infrastructure in. So that invitation remains on the table. Frankly, I'm going to suggest to you now that that application comes before you at your next meeting for a public hearing, regardless of whether or not you submit additional information, and we will review what we have, which is just a location map and a request for a rezoning of that site. At that time, I would suggest we can evaluate this specific proposal and talk about this specific proposal and whether or not it makes sense for Ray or not, so that we can have that discussion. We've been wanting to have that discussion. It's gonna happen I would recommend we have it at the next regularly scheduled meeting where we can get a forum and have this discussion in detail about your specific project, and hopefully you're able to submit additional details to us in the meantime of what that entails. But if not, we'll go and we'll make a decision on what we have. And so I think we need to do that as well with that area and move forward with reviewing that project.
I might have missed it. What is the current boundary lines that Ray controls then? Is it half mile or?
1 mile.
1 mile.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's a
Look at
map
that
up
map
there.
right there.
Oh, sorry.
That's the.
And this is another map too.
Okay.
Which shows kind of,
Where's your, Al, where's your,
and this is the
where are you
subject,
talking about?
this
Where's
is the
yours at?
property that they
The red striped one.
want to rezone.
It's on North Hill.
Right there.
Oh, okay.
And so what we have is a location map for this and an application that says they want to rezone it to residential. And so I think we should review it at the next meeting, regardless of what we have before us as additional material. We'll just go ahead and we'll review it and have more detailed conversation about that at that time. And a full staff report that reviews all these issues.
We have to decide what date too.
Yeah, we can talk about that
I do believe one of the things I read in the comprehensive plan too is staying on paved roads. East side of town, that's a gravel road. And then I talked to 2 engineering firms and I asked them criteria for water towers, and they said one of the 5 things they go for is the high point. The high point is northwest of right here, on Tom Wheeler's land. That's the high point.
And I think we covered this in the commission meeting last night. And we covered why we made that decision. And it's really not this board that makes that decision. It's a commission meeting.
Information for everybody else.
So now,
Yeah,
If
yeah,
I-
information's available for everybody.
if we can move on maybe and talk about just sort of public involvement, what we're looking forward to for stakeholders, and just get your input on who we should be talking to and having meetings with when we're here in April. Our goal is to certainly get a broader input on the plan, comp plan, and have a broader process. And so certainly we understand that Tioga Tribune covers Ray, and they cover the city commission meetings. In the future, maybe it might make sense to do a short article about the planning process and what we're working on in Ray, and we can certainly draft an article April, we're shooting for, I think, April 8th and 9th to be in Ray for 2 days of meetings. Is that correct? I think it's the 8th and 9th, that's a Tuesday and Wednesday. And so we're hoping to even go to the school. One of the things we'd really like to do is go to a classroom in the school, a high school classroom, and spend, an hour or two with some students and talk about plans and get some of their input. And so wanted to get your advice on how, if maybe one of you could contact the superintendent of the school.
I'd like to do that.
You maybe do that, Michael, and try to arrange within those 2 days some.
What is
Maybe
8th
the
and 9th?
8th and 9th of April, whether or not you can arrange for us to come and meet with the class and kind of talk about the comp plan and why we're doing it and get them involved and kind of thinking about their future. Michael, that's your task.
I can do that.
Get back to us on that.
That is a Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, Tuesday and Wednesday. City Police Department, certainly, are you still looking for a police officer?
Yep.
It might be useful to, get a general sense of where you're at and just write up a section in the comp plan about where you're at the time. We can do that later. I'm not too concerned about that right now. I would though like to meet with Fire and Emergency Services, and it looks like some fire people maybe are here tonight. Did Kim, you mentioned some fire folks are here? It'd be great to meet with you when we're here on the 8th and 9th and get an understanding of some of, not necessarily your building, but just some of your challenges and opportunities and how you feel like you're servicing growth and where growth might occur. Right now, we've had a limit on 2-story buildings because of a ladder truck. Is that something that you want to maintain to continue moving forward? So I don't know who would be the best to contact the fire department. If we've got a number here, if someone here.
Maybe Jordan.
I can take care of that.
So you can set up a meeting with them, okay? And so what we'll do is start sending out a schedule, but if at least Jordan, you can make initial contact with them and try to say, is there a time on the 8th or 9th during the day that we can meet? Senior groups, I know there's a senior citizens group in town. Is that a group to go to, do you think, and talk to while we're here? Is there like a lunch that they would have typically on a Tuesday or Wednesday?
This Tuesday's.
Tuesdays at noon.
Tuesdays at noon would be their lunch. Okay. Is there a number there for someone that we could call?
Bernie Arcand,
Bernie?
Yep.
And do you have a number for them?
568-2900.
2900? Okay, thanks. Are there any other local officials, local elected officials that aren't on the city commission? Do you think that we should be talking to?
Park board?
Oh, right, the park board, yep. I think I have one somewhere in here. Recreational organizations, okay, park board.
There's a Ray Community Development Board.
And I know Kim has the park board contact, so I'll get back with Kim on that. Do they meet at a regular time?
They usually meet the first Monday of the month.
Okay, would that Monday be the first Monday of the month? No, that'd be second. Yeah. Okay, we will contact them. The Community Development Board, is there a contact for them?
Yeah, Brandon Hoagie, 568-3311.
Got that one
Okay, Brandon.
memorized?
568, what was the rest of it? 568, sorry.
3318.
This is Brandon Hoagie.
Okay, hey, Brandon. Would you have a couple people that would be interested in just sitting down and kind of talking about what your goals are, or how you kind of see?
You're probably wrong a couple people.
Okay,
Pretty tough in April though.
is it, what's happening in April?
Tax, he's an accountant.
Oh, gotcha, sorry about that.
How about, let's see, what is our March meeting? For that board?
Yeah, we could certainly do, if there's a March meeting, we'll be back in March, so, or we'll be here in March, so we can certainly do your group in March if that helps.
He's gonna
Or
be
we can
busy
do
with
it after.
taxes.
We
You
could
can call
also-
me, Brent.
We could also do it after April too. I'd like to get as many meetings in on those 2 days as possible, but if there are a couple of groups that we don't catch until May, that's fine. So if your group is one that we don't catch until May, that's fine.
I can organize other board members to go too.
Okay, well, we'll see how this schedule lines up. I'll put May behind your name if it fills up with other people.
Excuse me, Ben.
Yep.
I was mistaken. 7th will be the first one, so we should be meeting.
Oh, they might be. The Parks Board might be meeting that day, on a Monday?
Yeah,
Okay.
Park board will meet that Monday, and then we're gonna be this Tuesday. and Wednesday.
Okay, that might work for them. That'd be good if we could just go to their meeting rather than having a special meeting thing.
Chamber of Commerce.
Is there a contact there?
Amanda Wyrock is their president. I think she's still there.
Sorry, I forget how to spell Wyrock.
W-E-Y-R-A-U-C-H.
R-A-U-C-H? Okay.
We could maybe combine the meeting with the development board and Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
Just keep it for people. And I can take care of that meeting with the Great Community Development. Brendan's helping, and Brendan's busy with that.
Okay.
I don't wanna bother him.
I'm gonna go back down. So we can do these ones. There are several local churches we can certainly contact. This is a little bit outside of the scope of what we typically do, but sometimes in small communities, churches are some of the most active organizations. So we don't really have to contact them, but I just put them on the list to get your thoughts on whether or not those groups should be contacted or not.
You can change the Rainbow Valley to just Radio Lutheran.
To just what?
Radio Lutheran.
This is really moving. But any thoughts on these is that different than the other Lutheran church?
The other one closed.
This one's closed.
No, or the, oh, I see, I did see that.
One
The
closed.
Rainbow Valley one closed.
So this is probably the right number for the church, 2244. Anyone know what the church number would be?
I think there's a few of them that
A
lost
few of
it.
those will have to be fixed. So the question is, do we even want to contact the churches? Are we going to get to the same group of people in general through the other stakeholders? Or do we need to go through the churches to get people interested? I guess is the question.
There would be probably about the same.
Okay, we're not going to do churches. We're taking churches off. Businesses. These are some businesses we know are here, and certainly if we could organize a meeting with a group of them to hear some of their concerns.
You could take S&J out of it.
S&J is,
Come off, yeah.
S&J is not there anymore.
Try to get Ken to see which ones.
So we'll get with Kim on the businesses then. We don't have to go through all those right now. Any other things? The medical professionals, Tioga, you go over there or you go to Williston, right? In general. So they don't, to your knowledge, have any plans of satellite office? Or
They
have
have
it
here.
They have
They
a
have
clinic here
And where's the clinic at?
in the mall.
The mall. Would be helpful to talk to them and talk to the mall folks about certain plans we want. Is there a number other than this, you think, or someone in the clinic that would be best to talk to? Just the mall people.
Probably talk to the Tioga Clinic for contact.
Any other ideas you have for groups that should be engaged in thinking about the future of the block?
When you're talking about the school, you just wanted to meet with a group of kids, or you want to meet with the administrators?
I think it'd probably be good to meet with the administrator or the board too, if they have future plans that they haven't already accomplished.
I think that's, I work at the school too.
Yeah.
And, that is, kind of a big question mark with the administration on, what if that development fills up? What if
Yeah.
more developments happen? To kind of have a little bit of plan on their part. I know they've hired a group to kind of do a study on our area to see what potentially could happen, just so they can kind of
Prepare.
not be Wofford City and build a brand new school and still have portables, to have a little, hopefully if they could have a little bit of ideas. So I think they'd be pretty interested in visiting with.
Yeah, it'd be good if you could talk to us super and figure out who we could talk to kind of do that too. That's good. Yep. If they have any future facility.
Because they're landlocked
Yep.
essentially now, so that could play a little bit of role into some
Yep.
things too.
Yep, for sure. Any other questions or thoughts on people we could contact that just reach out to and go to their, okay? Well, we'll keep working on that. We'll work on an agenda, but if Jordan, you can help with fire, Michael, you can help with school, and then Rodney can help with the chamber and the community folks, and we'll keep moving forward with reaching out to some of the community members. Anyone else in the community, anyone else in the audience think there's a group that we're missing here that we should talk to about the future of Ray and where Ray's going in terms of growth? The landowners, of course, and I think we'll kind of swing back to that as well. Okay, well, this will be in April, that we'll have an agenda and hopefully have a pretty good coordinated schedule so that we can be efficient, move from meeting to meeting, and get some good input that'll inform the plan. And then the goal will be, actually at those, the goal that we have is to do a summary during the night, both on the 8th and the 9th. So in lieu of having a regularly scheduled planning commission meeting on the 8th, we have a public meeting where we summarize what we've heard during the day with meeting with stakeholders. And we'll do a quick summary analysis of what we heard on the 8th, and we'd like to do a quick summary analysis on the 9th. So we have two like hour-long meetings that we hope the planning board to come to during the evening. And you'd certainly be invited to come to any meetings with stakeholders as well. We can orchestrate those and go to them, but once we get the agenda out and the list of meetings, if you have a particular one like Jordan, if you want to come to fire one or a school one, you're welcome to come to those meetings and sit as a planning commission member to provide your thoughts. But then the idea would be to give the public a summary that evening of what we've heard from the service providers and the stakeholders. So that's the general agenda that we're looking for on the 8th and the 9th. So is everyone generally okay with that plan of attack? Okay, we'll move forward with that. And that really concludes what we were intending to cover tonight in terms of comp plan.
We need to set a March meeting. When, are you planning on being here in March?
It was not my goal, but if we are going to be doing some business like we're doing the Hickle zoning, certainly I'll plan to be here. So that would be, I would say, your typical meeting.
Well, it'd be March 10th is when the city meets, so it usually would be the 12th on Wednesday.
Is there any reason why Tuesdays don't work as well as you for Wednesdays?
Yeah, because Wednesdays is when teachers and people have kids, it's a church night, so they don't ever schedule any ball games or anything
on
on Wednesdays.
Wednesdays, so Tuesdays sometimes ball games are scheduled and things like that.
Well, March will it be?
Yeah, the girls are still going there.
There'll be something on the 12th, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
or on
Oh,
the
actually, no, the 12th, they won't, that'll be the week of the state tournament. So
There'd be nothing on Tuesday.
So
there
those
won't
are
be
the-
anything on that Tuesday, no. Then we'll get into baseball, golf, and track starting in April again, so.
If we can plan for that Tuesday, that'd be
Okay, March 11th.
Do you know if that would or wouldn't work for you?
That's fine.
That works for both of you? Okay.
One suggestion
Uh-huh.
to think about, I'd like to see the planning commission, planning zoning meet before the city commission, so that when something's brought before the planning board, then they always have to go to the city commission, which would be just a few more days. Then we could get things rolling faster than waiting another month.
Frankly, I'm not aware of any time where we've had a problem with that issue,
Okay.
Gordon. So
Okay.
I guess I
Okay.
understand your request, but I'm not aware of any problem we've had.
And I think part of the problem too is sometimes Brent comes to both planning and zoning and the city commission meeting, and he's gonna make the trip out here. It works best if we back them up next to each other. All right. So the next meeting will be March 11th at 7 o'clock.
And if you do plan to submit any information, just get it to us as soon as you can, otherwise we'll go with what you got.
I got stuff for you already, yeah, just wait.
Okay,
One of my partner engineers is on vacation with her kids, so
Okay.
she wasn't ready to.
send everything, okay, well, we'll report.
And remember, you have to have people that have businesses, and that's why there's hardly any businesses in Ray.
All right, we'll have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
Second.
I'll second that.
You did?
Alright.
Opposed?
Grand Prix? Yeah.
So are you free to do work for other people now?
No. Trying to get rid of some, actually.
Oh, yes, you probably subcontract out so while too.
Oh, God, no. No, in fact, I should send them your way.